Welcome to the Art of Art Collection Management with Artwork Archive, maintenance best practices to protect and preserve your art. Thank you for taking the time to join us today and for introducing yourselves in the chat and answering the poll. A few housekeeping items before we jump in. If you need access to captioning, you can access that by clicking live transcript on your button panel and then select show subtitle. Thank you all for filling out the poll so we all know who you are on this webinar. If you have joined late, feel free to continue introducing yourself in the chat. Speaking of, so we have the chat to introduce ourselves, and for any technical issues that you may have, feel free to mention it there. And then when it comes to Q&A, we will definitely have time at the end. We would love to answer your questions. So please use the Q&A button at the bottom panel to post your questions. We'll be using that tool to review and answer the questions. Lastly, we will be recording this webinar. You probably got the notification when you joined. And so the webinar, along with the slides and some other assets, will be sent after the webinar tomorrow on Friday. And so I believe that is what I wanted to cover for housekeeping. Before we start, I just want to offer a brief overview of Artwork Archive. Like I mentioned, we are based here in Denver, Colorado. We work with artists, collectors, and organizations from all over the world to help them organize and manage and showcase their artworks. And I'm going to take this time to also introduce myself and my wonderful presenters and panelists. So my name is Elysian McNiff-Kogelmeyer. My pronouns are she and hers, and I am on the Artwork Archive team. And I love doing these webinars. I've done quite a few. And so to those that have returned, welcome back. And to those that are new, I hope you enjoy it. I am the child of artists and creatives and art educators. So the creative process has always been in my blood. I've worked in the arts since graduating from college. And just, a brief synopsis of my work. I've worked within an arts foundation, academic museums. I served as curator. I've written for a number of publications. I've made online art classes. And now I'm really lucky to be on the Artwork Archive team as head of growth and working with you all to help you organize and share and manage your artworks. So that's a little bit about me. And I'm going to hand it off to Antonia to introduce herself.
I'm Antonia Dapena-Tretter. My pronouns are she and her. I'm the art curator at Stanford Children's Health, which means that I manage a collection at the Lucille Packard Children's Hospital, which is the pediatric teaching hospital for Stanford University, but also its offsite clinic. There's about 60 of them. And I come at that via the museum world. So I have, oh gosh, almost 15 years of museum experience under my belt now. Hard to believe. But in my current role, I feel like maintenance is actually even more so important. And I say that because for us, the investment in the art collection is an investment in the patients and families who benefit from that holistic healing environment. Okay, now I'm going to pass the buck to Guy.
Hi, my name is Guy Merrill. My pronouns are he and him. Apart from being a practicing artist, I work for an organization called For Culture, which is the King County organization that oversees funding and grants for public art, arts, preservation, and heritage. And King County is the county that Seattle is based in. I'm actually new to the role as collections manager. For the past 5 years, I've actually been the preparator, and then recently switched over to being the collections manager, and I co-manage the collection of about 2,500 pieces spread out over around 150 locations throughout the county with one other person. So having Artwork Archive as a tool has been a great boon to our work and be able to kind of efficiently work on this large and vast collection. And I've been doing this work as an art handler and working in art spaces for about 15 years, since 2007.
Awesome, thank you. So I'm really excited. I've been really excited about this webinar ever since I first broached the topic with Antonia and Guy. You all are in wonderful hands with these two as presenters. I'm really excited for the content they will share. And who are you all? So I'm going to share the results for the poll. We like to know how familiar you are with Artwork Archive, because we will be using and sharing some of our tools. So it looks like a great chunk of you are new, 78%, so welcome. And then we have a number of clients as well, so welcome back. And to be totally transparent too, Guy and Antonia, their institutions are clients of ours. But I say that because one of the best parts of my job is I get to learn from all of the great practices they are doing at their institutions, and then we can then in turn share it with you all. When it comes to the types of organizations, it looks like we have a spread with almost nearly 50% being other. So it looks like I need to put some other types of industries down to fine tune this, but 19% coming from public art programs, 16% coming from small museum and historical societies, and 11% coming from the academic world, as well as some galleries and art centers. So thank you everyone for submitting that poll and for sharing. I will be getting into my slides now. And we'll get into the content that you are here for. All right, so our faces on video. All right, why are we here? Like the description said when we were sharing out this webinar, art ages just like us. And in order to be proper custodians and stewards of our cultural heritage, we have to be proactive rather than reactive when it comes to maintaining and conserving our collection. We want to stay on top of our artwork's maintenance, so to keep it clean and protected. And when damage happens, to be able to respond to it quickly. We'll cover some best practices listed here to help you and your organization, whether it's an active site like a public art program or a hospital art collection, or if you're with a museum or historical society and your works are on view or in a storage facility and you may have different types of needs. But here in this list are some of the topics we'll cover: how to establish a baseline when it comes to the condition of your collection, deciding what artworks to prioritize. Do you have to pick favorites? Creating a maintenance schedule, how to initiate faster and more modern maintenance workflows, not being limited to just a binder or papers, how to collaborate with your conservators, producing maintenance reports and other types of paperwork that will help you stay on top of your collection's needs, preparing for deaccessions if that does come down the pipeline, and how to advocate for more increased resources for your conservation projects and for your collection. And so, as I mentioned, we will be using Artwork Archive for examples. And as I mentioned, for full transparency, Antonia and Guy are two wonderful clients of ours who have been using our tools, but also are sharing their best practices that you can utilize no matter what database you are using. And for those that are watching and on our collector plan, the maintenance tool that we will be showing is for organization plans, but we do have other tools like additional files and the schedule and such that you can use in your own plan. But the maintenance tool that we'll spend a lot of time on is available only for organization plans. Okay, now with this, I get to step aside and let Antonia speak to her best practices when it comes to assessing and evaluating your art collection's maintenance needs and how to establish that baseline. So Antonia, I'll let you take it from here.
So when I started at Stanford Children's, I realized that I had a pretty big job ahead of me because my predecessor didn't do a ton with a database. We were not yet on Artwork Archives. And we have about 3,500 artworks and objects. And I felt like I needed to go around and meet every single one. And because I've done registration work in the past, I recognize the importance of having condition reports. And so I made a great effort to get around to every single artwork and started with the simple act of taking pictures. So documenting visually every side of an object, right? Anything that looks suspicious, and then uploading all of that information into the database so that when you round again, and I would say you need to do that regularly, you will start to see incremental changes in your objects. So an example I like to use is maybe you have a painting that has a crack, but that crack might be stable. And so you document that crack and then you look at it over time. And when it starts to lift, that's when you need to act. So you don't have to necessarily do something right away. Now, the picture that I've put here on this slide is actually one of my favorite sculptures in the collection. It's by Jonathan Darman. And as you can see, it's kind of an abstracted mother and child, which is important to our clients because we have 4,500 births that happen at the hospital each year. And this is outside of our sanctuary. So it's a very calm, meditative space. And if you're looking at the arm of what is probably the mother figure here, you will see a bit of a splotch. And this picture was taken prior to doing some protective wax coating. And we're watching that splotch. We've actually not seen any change in 3 years. It's a little bit of oxidation, but because it's not changing, because we're waxing and protecting it, we're okay leaving it as is. But because it is a slight eyesore, we've actually tinted the wax with a little bit of brown. And that way, when I don't have another photo here to show you the after, but you actually don't notice it at all when you're looking at the piece in person. But nonetheless, every year, at least once, we're going to check on that splotch. So making your baseline and keeping up with it is just important.
Awesome. Thank you, Antonia. And now to the next slide. So after you've created that baseline, how do you keep the momentum going? And so here, bulleted on the slides, are some tips that have come from our panelists that they'll speak to. One being utilizing a web form on your website to solicit feedback from those in the public or those on your staff. Guy has a really great example of using Artwork Archive's randomized daily view when logged into the database to make sure that the view on the collection stays fresh, especially with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of artworks. Conducting rounds once a week, and so physically looking at the artworks, and then also just being curious and seeking out artworks that you have not seen in a while. And like this great quote below from one of you about there'll always be a surprise. And another quote that is included here on this slide, a well-engaged collection will be a well-maintained one. And so Guy makes a really great point, especially for those with public art programs, is that the more eyes on the collection, the better everyone can be stewards in making sure these collections are well taken care of. And so Antonia, I'll let you continue the moment. Well, actually, no, Guy wanted to go first because you have quite a number of things to say, and then I'll let Antonia wrap up the slide.
Well, I mean, I think yeah, the well-engaged collection and also the random and random view and being curious. I kind of think about like the analogous would be like a record collector going through the bins and looking for stuff and finding things. I think that's actually a great when you have time, right? That's a great mentality to have. Often because our collection is spread out over a pretty large geographic area. If I have to go do something like oh, can you move this piece? And I'm in the area. It's like, well, what else is around here? Let's go look at some other things. And then I hadn't seen this piece by Nori Sato, which is at a pump station. Actually, it's an integrated artwork that is. She was involved in basically the creation of this whole facade of this building, and there's actually water flowing over copper here, and it's called Influence of Influence. That's Influence of Influence with a T at the end. Rain Drain by Nori Sato. And I hadn't seen it after working there for 3 years, and it's like, what's that? That's really cool. Let's go look at it. And I went and looked at it. It was like, okay, we need to think about some maintenance on this piece, There's been several other pieces like that where it was just like, I haven't seen that yet. Let's go look at it. Let's explore where this collection is and the context in which the artwork is. And that has actually led to several restoration projects and more contact with the stakeholders at the site and just a better engaged collection in general. And I think that's a great lesson that I've learned about this work.
Great, thank you. Anything else to add with the various bullets?
Yeah, we do we have been doing um, uh, collection surveys once a year, or every year we were doing three, a third of the collection, and that because of COVID had dropped off, and now we're trying to work on getting back to it. And so, what we've decided to do is create a web form on our website for our county employees and staff members to be able to interact with us and give us feedback and make requests. And also, it's public facing too. So if the public wants to ask us questions about artwork, they can.
Mm.
As I already mentioned, the randomized daily view, there's been times that I'd seen things come up and I'd never seen before, and I went and found them, and sometimes they needed work and sometimes they were great. Yeah, just again, be curious and seek out the collection and kind of dig into it.
I love that. And that also stays true for, you're referencing public artworks, but it may also be a trip to a storage unit that, you have not been to for a while, or another site for maybe those with a museum or historical society collection. So I love that. Antonia, did you want to add to this slide?
Disagree with everything Guy is saying. We also have a web form because we have to get feedback from those 60 offsite clinics, because I can't be all of those places either. And so I do once a week rounds at the hospital, but as needed, I'll go off to look at artworks elsewhere. And so having those eyes out in the field, and also making sure that they are invested and care about the artwork, right? So sometimes doing presentations to make others aware, and that way then they notice things they didn't know before, which allows us to just be able to take a little bit pressure off of ourselves if we know that others are also caring and active. And it's usually the same people who like to email me about things, but I'm so grateful that they do, so that we can keep up with that work that needs to be done, the maintenance of those objects.
Yeah, and you two just spurred another great example from the Cheyenne Public Art Program that also covers Laramie. That art program actually enlisted the help of teenagers, of high school students, and as part of a program, the students go around and look at the artworks and make notes, and then upload it into the Artwork Archive account. And so it's great because it gives students comfort, awareness, vocabulary, ownership of the artworks, and start them young. So moving on to the next slide. How do you decide, after you create that baseline and you're looking at the artworks, like how do you prioritize which artworks get the conservation, especially since you may not have budget to conserve or maintain every single artwork? And so Antonia has some really great tips for dealing with that conundrum.
That is a hard one. It's kind of like the Sophie's Choice thing, because you really can't do everything. And one of the ways, unfortunately, that we do make decisions is based on the value of the artwork. But I wanted to share an example of a piece that might not be as valuable as, say, our Jim Dine, but it is so loved by our community that it has become a priority for me. And that is this banana slug by Michael Green. And our patients love to ride the slug. And so it's a piece in one of our outdoor garden spaces. It is constantly being used. And as a result, it shows signs of wear. And what you're seeing on the slide is the peeling and flaking exterior paint of an antenna. And also below that, the condition report showing what we did in order to get that slug's antenna back to where it needed to be. And the initials of my wonderful contracted conservator named Leslie Bone, who is here in the Bay Area. If you ever need conservation work done, she is incredible and paid hourly. So it is affordable.
Awesome, thanks. I have a toddler, so I can just imagine my toddler jumping on that slug and taking him for a ride. So when planning this webinar, this comment that Antonia made really stuck in my brain, stuck in my mind, because there is so much that you all are juggling. you may be a registrar, but you also may be the public art manager at large and have to juggle, programming and marketing along with the conservation and just the organization of your collection. It's not just about conservation and preservation, perhaps in your day-to-day. You have many things on your plate. And so I love when Antonia said that our database could be, your second brain, your repository, because there's just so much information that lives on just one artwork record or just one artwork's life, not only for back-end management and understanding of the artwork, but being able to then share it out to your public and to promote your institution's mission. So I wanted to take a moment here to brag about how amazing Antonia and Stanford Children's Health has been when it comes to planning for and documenting and communicating out their maintenance. And so Antonia, since this is one of your artworks, I'll let you speak to it.
This is a fun one. So because we have as many children who visit our space as we do, we want to have works that are really tangible. We know that they learn a lot through touch. So there's no protective coating over this mosaic. And what you're seeing, it's kind of like a helicopter view. There's all these little toy cars that Jonathan Brown, the artist, built into the piece. And so I don't say when they fall off, or I don't say if they're going to fall off, I say when they're going to fall off. They are going to fall off sometime. And so I'm being proactive. There's that, how reactive versus proactive do we need to be? I am being proactive and documenting every single one of the cars. I've had conversations with Jonathan Brown to know the make and model, if we can say that for a toy car, so that I can purchase replacement vehicles as necessary. And then all of that information is uploaded into the database. And that's important because I know that I won't always be here. There will come a time when I might say, wow, the cost of living in California is expensive. I'm going to go back to Pennsylvania and someone else will take over. Or, something bad could happen. My predecessor, I was not able to meet her because she passed away. And so I think she had intended to be in the role for considerably longer. And there was a lot of paper that she had amassed, but she was not big on uploading information into that former database that she clearly didn't really enjoy using. So Artwork Archives is really accessible and easy to use. And so that makes it easier for me. And I actually spent the early part of COVID digitizing all of those paper files and uploading absolutely everything to the appropriate artwork. So now I can find it at the tip of my fingers whenever I need it. And so can anybody else who comes along down the road. So it's thinking about that legacy of your art collection and what it will require to stay beautiful for the years to come.
I love that. Just like claps for your proactiveness and thinking about the future, but also for the day-to-day. And just looking at this artwork, if you think about how smart it was that you have thoroughly documented the piece so that if the ambulance breaks off, you know exactly where to put it, or to call attention in the additional files section, you also have thorough cleaning instructions, the installation schematics, where all the pieces have to go. Additional files can be for conservation and maintenance, but it can also be, certificates of authenticity, purchase, paperwork, donor paperwork. It could be videos of the installation, or you can attach videos or audio files from the artist if they're living and they want to share their story and their process. So a lot of great information to keep track of, to not only preserve the artwork, but also the artists and the context of the artworks, the legacies. Here I wanted to jump into the scheduling piece of things. So a little bit of nitty-gritty workflow of how do you stay on top of all of the maintenance needs, especially if you have hundreds of works within a collection. And so Antonia, you have some great strategies for creating that maintenance schedule cadence.
Well, for us, one of the big things to think about in terms of our exterior pieces, all of the works in our outdoor gardens, is that we want to do the waxing at least once a year, and generally when the bronzes are hot, because then the wax will sort of seep into the crevices better. But we also find in the past few years, we've had terrible forest fires. And so the smoke the ash will settle on pieces, and that typically happens later in the summertime. So for us, that schedule is the waxing earlier, like June, July, and then there's a nice wax buffer that protects the piece from that acidic ash, and then it's ash removal. And so that seems to be the busiest time of year for our exterior pieces. And then after we've sort of got them under control again, we can go back inside. And I still want to wax everything inside, but I feel less pressure to do that on a particular schedule. And then I also I always have Tuesday mornings available for whatever collection management and conservation needs to happen. So that way it's just built in, it's protected time.
That's really smart. I love thinking about the seasonality of things when it comes to the artworks that are living outdoors. Guy, do you have anything to share about how For Culture thinks about this?
Yeah, well, every year, and usually we think about it in quarters. We do have every year things that we have to clean and maintain, including like fountain maintenance, which I've all of a sudden become like an expert on this one fountain. I never thought I would get into fountain stuff before, but now I am. Yeah, every year, and in fact, there's an earthwork in our collection. There's the Robert Morris earthwork, which is pretty huge, and every 4th of July, I have to schedule extra security for Robert Morris. So there's a lot of different things. We don't have as many bronzes, but we have a lot of painted steel pieces, and up here in the Northwest, definitely tree pollen and wildfire smoke. Definitely, and those two things kind of like accentuate each other actually. So there's definitely like a need to get out there every year. With the fountain, I have to like around this time of year, actually, we have to go turn it on and clean it out. And then later in the year, when it gets closer to winter, I actually have to call them up and say like, hey, did you turn the fountain off? Because we don't want it to be on while it freezes. Things like that. I have also now we haven't been using Artwork Archive as long as Antonia has, but I have just recently created a collection of kind of high touch within our Artwork Archive, a collection of high touch cyclical maintenance artworks. So these are pieces that every 1 to 3 years need to be worked on, cleaned, maybe restored. There's actually several outdoor wooden sculptures, some that woodpeckers come and invade, and other pests. So we have to stay on top of those items as well. And just having that as a collection is an easy way to just, oh, what are all those pieces? Here they are. And as I was putting it together, I even found more of them. So now it's up to 52 items that we should be looking at every 1 to 3 years in detail. So yeah, it's an ongoing process.
Yeah, and I bet pests and woodpeckers are not the type of engagement with pieces that you
Yes,
want.
exactly.
And I have a great image that Antonia shared, 2 images. Antonia, I'll let you speak to how this demonstrates what you were just referencing.
Before I speak to this, Guy, you reminded me that another thing you have to keep track of is if you have any kinetic pieces that they need to be lubricated, right? If anything is moving, it's going to seize up if you don't take care of that. So just put it on your radar to make sure to keep your things nice and greasy. So what I'm looking at here on the left-hand side, you're probably thinking like, that is like the ugliest day. Aren't you in Northern California? What's happening? That is from the ash in the sky. And then on the right-hand side, that's one of our beautiful sunny days. And in order to keep that piece, we call it our lollipop sculpture, looking good, those dichroic glass discs have to be sort of swept with a paintbrush and then polished at least once during the forest fire season. But it will build up if you don't stay on top of that.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great example, and it resonates for me as living in Denver, Colorado. We have more and more forest fires. Our natural disasters are seemingly coming bigger, more intense, more often. And so something that we are all set, seems to be top of mind quite often. Again, when we were planning this webinar, I was madly taking notes because Antonia and Guy have such incredible things to share. And one of the things that Guy said that really struck out to me was beyond the okay. So how to do more within our maintenance workflows to make sure that we're not just checking off boxes, that we really are loving and taking care of our artwork so that they can thrive and live on. And then we're also creating workflows that are modern and effective so they too can live on, to Antonia's point, beyond our time at our institutions. And I'm a visual person, we're all visual people, so we want to just make sure that we're just showing examples all the time. I just wanted to call out this object record from the For Culture account, because as you can see with all these additional images, there's a lot of details, pieces, environment to keep track of. And then what I love here too as well is the rich description. And so this is actually public facing, so that people within the public can view and learn more about the work, whether it's being shared by a private room or public profile. So with that, I wanted to get into some tools to help with that workflow. Again, Guy made a really great comment of like beyond the binder, right? Like we don't have to be limited to paper files anymore. And one of the advantages of using a cloud-based system, whether it's our work archive or something else, is that you have access to your database anywhere. So for those that have airport art programs, if you're in the terminal and you see a piece and it needs some maintenance and you want to log a note, you don't have to wait until you walk half a mile back to your office and probably have been stopped 5 times in the meantime. You can pull up your phone, your tablet, and access, enter, and share out information at any time. As I pull up my screen to show some artwork archive back end, Guy, Antonia, do you have anything to share when it comes to that cloud-based functionality?
Yeah, actually, just yesterday, we have a building that's kind of being reconfigured, and a lot of desks are moving around, so I'm having to consolidate a bunch of art on several floors into a temporary storage. And I was able to, I deinstalled the whole floor yesterday and put it in storage. And within using the manage locations, like when you're in the location, it says manage artwork at the location. You can really quickly, I mean, within like a minute, I was able to put all of those artworks into this new location, and they're there on this date, Whereas what we were using before, we were using a program called Past Perfect, which I'm sure some people are aware of. Doing that with, 20 pieces would be in a while. At least for me, I wasn't that good at it. Maybe somebody has a better way of using that program, but it took me a long time to use it. So,
Yeah, and that location tracking is really helpful because, yeah, especially if pieces do have to move offsite to be conserved or maintained, pieces do move, pieces that are going off on loan as well, another time when something can happen. So being able to track all the information, the condition of the pieces beforehand, and then when you receive them back is really helpful. I'm going to pull back up the giant banana slug again from Stanford because I love this little guy. And so one thing to call out is Antonia's incredible use of additional files. So not only is she including signage, which you can view, download, share, but here to call out also uploading the paint composition and application data, so that if the piece needs to be painted and you're no longer there, people know what color paint, so there's not some mix match, or if the paint needs to be mixed, having that information there. And again, an installation schematic. If I keep scrolling down, like I said, on organization plans, you also have maintenance records, which is pretty perfect for this topic within maintenance best practices. So you can keep track of not only the maintenance for the object, for the artwork, for the artifact. And you can see here the wonderful rich notes that has been added by Antonia and her conservator. You can see that Leslie is the conservator here, the date. You can also add documentation. So if I were to click on this, it would download perhaps the image of the application. And I'm going to click out of this wonderful example and go into an artwork archive account to show you that you can also keep track of maintenance collectively from the maintenance tab. So here you can see what has been done. You can see how many maintenance tasks have been done, the total cost, so great for budgeting or making the case for increased budgeting. You can see what artworks have had what work done to them, by whom, the cost. And I like to make a terrible joke about, you can see who your problem children are. So, fast forward to the end of this presentation, when we talk about deaccessions, the pieces that are just not holding up that well. You can report on this. You can always export all this data at any time. You can also create a maintenance report, which will show you all of the maintenance done, and you can filter it. Maybe you have to create the report for the year. So you can create a report for what was done from January 1st to December 31st. And if I go back to a piece and scroll down to these maintenance records, and increase my screen because those look a little small. If I click add new, here you can see you can schedule something for upcoming. So as Antonia mentioned, if you have something that's seasonal or annual with cleaning, you can log that and keep track of that, especially when you check add reminder, it'll be saved onto your schedule. If you are working with a variety of different types of conservators and restorers, you can keep track of who does what. You can always create a new contact here if you're working with someone new. The cost, the notes, as you saw, Antonia includes great notes. And then here is where you add that file. So you can add documentation. I mentioned the schedule. So all of your maintenance tasks and to-dos will be saved on the schedule along with other reminders. If works are moving in and out of storage, dates will be saved here as well. So you can see what's coming up. Every Monday morning, Artwork Archive will send you an email of what's coming up for the week. So we're just like, knock, 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 remember. And you can also sync it to your calendar as well. So you have access to it. A few other things to note. You can keep track of your conservators. If I go to relation, I can see all of my maintenance contacts. So let's go to art restoration. I have their contact information. So say you're standing in front of the piece and you are out, on the far ends of your county, guy. So you can contact someone. You can also see what reminders are saved for them. And then you can see what has been performed. So you may have someone who is best suited to your antiquities versus someone for your contemporary oil paintings, right? And then you can see the costs that are associated. And then you can always add additional files. Maybe this is your contract with the person. So I wanted to showcase how you can save your conservators and your restorers here within context. So you have access to it. And then I am going to click out, and you already mentioned, Guy, that you create collections. So you can create a grouping of artworks. And I love that you create a collection for the artworks to stay on top of so that you don't lose sight of it. So you have them in one centralized place for you to review. You have also created private rooms, and that's actually how you sent information to me preparing for this webinar. Do you want to speak quickly to how you've been using private rooms for maintenance?
Yeah, well, we haven't really started using it for maintenance yet, but I could see how it would work. And this actually kind of goes back to the engagement piece that we were talking about earlier. We are thinking of other people in for culture are wanting to like meet up and go do things in real life again. And one of the things that we've talked about doing is maybe taking a small group of people from other outside of public art and have us go and look at the condition of artwork in a building,
Mhm.
and that way they can understand what we do, and also we can get something out of it, which is like know which pieces we need to work. And one the way I was thinking about doing that is just creating a room that you could comment on. Set it so right there it says message. Like have everybody have that on their phones and say like, okay, when you see a piece, if you see anything up with it, write a message in there, and then that will go to somewhere I can. It goes to a spreadsheet, right? Like I can basically.
Yeah, so actually there's an
See all
inbox
that.
on every Artwork Archive
Right.
account. So all messages from private rooms, public profile will come to your inbox. And so you can see all of them.
So
Yeah.
this is not like I'm not going to expect people to be like making full condition reports, right?
Mm.
But what it would do is it would maybe narrow down the process a little bit, you know, like
Yeah.
and see which things that we need to go do a full condition report on. And that way, the 500 things that are in good shape, relatively good shape, we can say, okay, they've been seen and maybe we just need to go dust them, versus the 5 things that have like major issues, like painters have come by and dripped paint on the side or something like that, which does happen. Then we can narrow that process down and save us time, and also in